The alien princess every noble rejected, until a human stepped forward. Violia was a world of beauty and power, a civilization advanced in ways most humans could only dream of. Flying carriages streaked between spires, their trails leaving sparkling ribbons in the sky. Below, the citizens moved in harmony, aware of their planet's rigid hierarchy, yet proud of their traditions. Liara's gaze, however, was not on the citizens or the towers. It was on the stars beyond the city, on the vast unknown that stretched endlessly into space. Unlike most nobles of her world, she dreamed not of ceremonies, alliances, or palace life. She dreamed of exploring the universe, of meeting other worlds, learning their languages, and seeing their wonders. She wanted to bring knowledge back to Violia, to expand its borders not with conquest but with understanding. But the nobles did not see it that way. They whispered in shadowed corridors about her unusual ideas. The very ones who were meant to court her had refused her, one after another, each noble claiming she was unfit for the throne. Some said her fascination with human culture was inappropriate. Others argued that her curiosity about other planets made her weak. And yet Liara refused to hide her mind. Today was another ceremonial gathering, one that the court had organized to present her with potential suitors. Every noble of the highest rank was to appear, each hoping to win her favor, or at least to gain the approval of the council. Liara had prepared herself, though her heart carried a quiet sadness. She wondered if she would ever find someone who could match her curiosity, her courage, or her vision for Violia's future. The great hall of the palace was as magnificent as the city itself. High ceilings, translucent crystal walls, and floors that shimmered like liquid glass reflected the soft light of the twin moons outside. Nobles gathered in clusters, their ceremonial robes glimmering with intricate patterns, signaling their wealth, their status, and their lineage. They murmured among themselves, eyes darting toward Liara, waiting for her judgment. Liara's mother, the queen, observed from a raised dais. Her expression was calm, but her eyes betrayed concern. She understood her daughter's nature better than most, and yet the rigid expectations of Violia's society weighed heavily on her. She knew the council wanted a suitor who was compliant, traditional, and predictable. Liara wanted something else entirely. As the first group of nobles approached, their faces polished and confident, Liara listened politely while they spoke of wealth, power, and loyalty. She nodded, smiled, and offered polite words, yet her thoughts wandered to distant stars and unknown worlds. Each noble left in frustration, their pride wounded by her polite but clear rejection. Some whispered that she was too proud. Others muttered that she would never marry a Violian noble at all. And then the hall fell silent. A new figure entered. Unlike the others, he did not wear a long, embroidered robe, nor did he carry the air of ancient nobility. He wore a simple uniform, marked with the insignia of the Earth-Interstellar Alliance, and his posture was confident but relaxed. He walked steadily toward the dais, his eyes scanning the room, but never with arrogance, only curiosity and calm determination. The nobles hissed under their breaths. Humans were known, but rare in Violia's circles. Most of the council considered them primitive. They had not expected one to appear in this sacred hall, and certainly not in a ceremony of royal importance. Liara, for her part, felt a strange excitement. Something about this human was different. His presence did not command respect through titles or wealth. It commanded it through a quiet confidence, through an unspoken intelligence, through an honesty that she had rarely seen in her world. "Princess Liara," he said, his voice clear and steady, "I am Captain Elias Kane, ambassador from Earth. I understand that you are searching for a partner to share your life and perhaps to guide your people. I wish to offer myself as a candidate." The room erupted into shocked whispers. The nobles gasped, some audibly. A human. A mere human, standing among the highest ranks of Violia, proposing to the princess. Many were scandalized. Some laughed outright, thinking it a joke. Others were visibly angry, stepping forward to challenge him. The council president, an elderly Violian named Saren Valles, rose and demanded, "Captain Kane, do you understand the nature of this proposal? You are a guest on our planet, a species regarded as young and untested. Our laws require that only those of noble Violian blood may approach the princess in this way." Elias did not flinch. "I understand your laws, Counselor Valles. I also understand the risks, but I believe that worth is not measured only by bloodlines or titles." It is measured by courage, intelligence, and character. I ask not for privilege. I ask for the chance to prove myself." The hall was silent. Liara's heart pounded. Never had she heard such words in the court, never had she seen someone speak with such clarity and honesty. The nobles' laughter and whispers grew louder, but she felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this human could see the world as she did, not bound by rigid expectations, not blinded by tradition. The council convened immediately. Whispers of outrage spread and debates grew heated. Some argued that allowing a human to even attempt this would undermine centuries of tradition. Others, though fewer, murmured that perhaps it was time for change, that Virelia needed fresh perspectives, and that maybe a human could provide them. Liara, standing tall, felt a wave of determination. She knew her choice mattered, but not for the reasons the council wanted. She had grown tired of suitors who measured themselves by titles or riches, suitors who could not see the world beyond Virelia. Perhaps the council would resist, perhaps it would take time, but she would not dismiss Elias without giving him a chance. She turned to him, her violet eyes steady. "Captain Kane," she said, "you are aware of the challenges you face. You are not of our blood nor of our customs. Many here will oppose you simply because of who you are." Elias nodded. "I am aware, Princess. I accept it. I do not come to claim your hand lightly. I come to show that I am worthy not because I belong, but because I can rise to meet the challenges of your world." A murmur passed through the crowd. Liara could see both shock and intrigue reflected in the nobles' faces. No one had ever spoken to the princess this way. No one had ever dared to challenge the traditions while remaining respectful. The council president, after a long pause, spoke. "Very well, Captain Kane. If you insist, the council will grant you a series of trials. You will have the opportunity to prove your worth. But be warned, these challenges are designed to test even the strongest Virealian noble. Many have failed, you may fail as well." Elias bowed slightly. "I am ready." Liara felt a flicker of excitement. Perhaps this human would succeed, not because he followed tradition, but because he thought differently, because he acted with intelligence and courage, because he understood that worth comes from one's actions, not ancestry. As the council outlined the first of the trials, Liara noticed something unusual. While the nobles seemed tense, their minds already calculating failures and pitfalls, Elias listened carefully. He asked questions, studied his surroundings, and considered his next steps. There was no arrogance, no impatience, only observation, thought, and resolve. The first trial would test his ability to navigate the palace's ancient labyrinth, a structure designed to challenge not only the body but the mind. Many Virealian nobles had attempted it and failed. The labyrinth was a symbol of tradition, a proof of intelligence and perseverance. If he could succeed, he would earn the first measure of respect. Liara could feel the energy in the hall shift slightly. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if they should mock or truly observe. She, however, felt a rare thrill. Perhaps she had finally found someone who could meet her, someone who could see her world not as a cage, but as a place full of possibilities. "Captain Kane," she said quietly just to him, "do not let them intimidate you. Trust your instincts and remember, you do not need to be like us, you only need to be yourself." Elias smiled faintly. "I will remember, Princess, thank you." And so, with the city's lavender light fading into the soft hues of evening, the first challenge began. A human had stepped forward where no noble dared, and Liara could not help but feel that her world was about to change. The palace labyrinth stretched before Captain Elias Kane like a living puzzle. Its high walls shimmered faintly in the twilight, carved from crystalline material that reflected light in unpredictable patterns. It was not merely a physical challenge. It was a test of the mind, the senses, and one's ability to remain calm under pressure. Many Virealian nobles had entered before him, and most had failed, turning back in frustration or becoming hopelessly lost. Elias paused at the entrance, taking a deep breath. He was aware of the whispers from the council and the noble spectators, their eyes sharp, their judgments heavy. They expected him to falter, to prove that a human could never match the skill of centuries-old Virealian nobility. But Elias did not focus on their expectations. He focused on what he knew, his training, his instincts, and the human ability to adapt. He had studied alien cultures, their technology, and their puzzles, not because he had to, but because he was curious. Curiosity, he reminded himself, was often stronger than arrogance. Liara watched from the balcony above, her violet eyes following every step. She could feel his determination radiating upward. Unlike the nobles, Elias did not move with rigid precision. He moved with observation, noticing details in the walls, the floor, and the ceiling that others overlooked. The labyrinth was alive in a sense. It responded to those who entered. Certain pathways shifted subtly, doors that seemed solid would dissolve, and illusions could make walls appear where there was only open space. Many nobles had approached it with pride, confident that bloodline and education would carry them through. They had failed. Elias, however, relied on his senses. He noticed the faint vibrations in the crystal floor, the subtle air currents hinting at open passages, and the patterns in the light that suggested hidden doors. Step by step, he moved carefully, testing each choice before committing. When he reached a fork in the corridor, he paused, placing his hand against the wall and feeling for its resonance. The crystal hummed slightly differently on one side. He followed the hum. "Interesting," he muttered softly, a smile tugging at his lips. Even in a challenge designed to intimidate, Elias found enjoyment. He had always believed that challenges were opportunities disguised as obstacles. Meanwhile, the council and spectators grew tense. The first few minutes had passed, and Elias had made progress where other nobles had failed. A murmur traveled through the audience. Some were skeptical, others intrigued, and a few were quietly anxious. The council president, Saren Valles, narrowed his eyes. A human navigating the labyrinth? It seemed impossible. Liara leaned forward, her hands gripping the balcony railing. "You can do this," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Show them what it means to see the world differently." As he advanced deeper, Elias encountered the first major obstacle, a chamber filled with rotating panels, each marked with strange symbols. The panels were designed to shift and rotate in complex patterns. One wrong move would trigger a defensive mechanism, sealing the chamber and forcing the entrant to start over. Many nobles had become frustrated, their minds tangled in calculations and probabilities. Elias studied the symbols. He recognized patterns similar to human logic puzzles, but with alien complexity. Instead of trying to memorize them, he observed how the panels moved, how the room responded to shifts in weight, and how timing affected their rotation. Step by step, he adjusted his movements, waiting for the right moment to step onto the next panel. A soft click echoed through the chamber as he completed the first sequence. He exhaled, a mix of relief and excitement. He knew that the labyrinth was designed to test not only skill but patience. Impatience was the downfall of most nobles. Humans, however, were often forced to improvise, to adapt when plans failed. This adaptability was his advantage. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. Time seemed strange within the labyrinth. Elias encountered illusions of endless corridors, dead ends that seemed real, and traps designed to frighten or confuse. Yet each time, he relied on observation, intuition, and a willingness to try unconventional solutions. When a door appeared impossible to open, he tested its edges and discovered a pressure-sensitive mechanism. When a corridor seemed to loop endlessly, he left subtle markings and retraced his steps logically, eventually finding the correct path. Liara could not tear her eyes away. She had expected him to struggle, perhaps to fail, but he moved with a calm determination that she found rare, even among her own people. There was something deeply human about his approach, a combination of curiosity and courage that no Virelian noble had demonstrated in decades. Finally, after what felt like hours, Elias reached the heart of the labyrinth, a central chamber bathed in a soft, violet light. In its center stood a pedestal with a crystal orb glowing faintly. Touching this orb was the traditional way to signal completion of the trial. Many nobles had reached this chamber only to falter at the final step, unsure how to manipulate the orb's energy without triggering a defense sequence. Elias examined the orb carefully. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. He placed his hands on its surface, feeling its energy. Instead of forcing it, he allowed himself to move in sync with its rhythm. Slowly, the orb brightened, then lifted slightly from the pedestal, responding to his careful guidance. He smiled as the light enveloped the chamber, signaling the trial's successful completion. Back in the observation hall, the nobles gasped. Even the council president looked astonished. No human had ever succeeded. Many had doubted his intelligence, his skill, his very presence. Yet here he was, proving not only that he could rise to the challenge, but that he could surpass expectations in ways the Virelian mind had not predicted. Liara's heart swelled with pride. She had seen glimpses of his ingenuity before, but witnessing it firsthand, seeing him navigate the labyrinth with patience, observation, and intuition, made her hope brighter than ever. He was not just clever, he was extraordinary. "Remarkable," she whispered. "He sees differently, he understands differently. Perhaps he is exactly what this world needs." When Elias emerged from the labyrinth, the crowd was silent, unsure how to respond. Some were still in disbelief, others whispered among themselves, struggling to reconcile their expectations with reality. A few young nobles watched in awe, inspired by the human who had faced the impossible and succeeded. Elias bowed slightly to the princess. "The labyrinth is complete, princess," he said simply, his calm demeanor never faltering. "It was enlightening," Liara smiled. "I have no doubt it was, and you handled it with patience and creativity, qualities most Virelians have lost in this age of tradition." "You have my admiration, Captain Kane." The council quickly convened to decide the next step. The human had survived the first trial. What would the next trial be? Some suggested physical combat, others proposed mental challenges far more complex than the labyrinth. All agreed on one thing: Elias had already proven that he could not be underestimated. The day passed into night, but Liara could not rest. She walked along the balcony, watching the stars above Virelia and thinking about the human who had dared to step forward. Every noble she had met before had followed rules, lived in fear of tradition, and avoided the unknown. Elias thrived in it. He turned uncertainty into opportunity, obstacles into lessons, and in doing so, he had captured her attention in a way no one else ever had. Meanwhile, Elias prepared for the next trial. Unlike the nobles who relied on pride, he relied on preparation and understanding. He knew he would face challenges unlike anything humans had experienced: zero-gravity simulations, alien logic puzzles, and tests of diplomacy and courage. Yet he welcomed them. Humans, he reminded himself, survived and thrived because they adapted, because they learned quickly, because they did not accept limits blindly. As he trained in the palace's chambers, Liara observed from afar. She saw him practicing, calculating, learning the rhythms of alien technology with remarkable speed. Her heart lifted with each step, realizing that the human before her was not only capable but brilliant in ways her people rarely saw. That evening, the council gathered once more to announce the second trial. Elias would face a simulated zero-gravity environment, testing his coordination, reflexes, and ability to adapt to alien physics. For Virelians, this was a simple challenge. They had trained for such environments since childhood. For a human, it would be a test of ingenuity, precision, and courage. Liara felt excitement tinged with worry. She knew he could succeed, but she also knew the trial would be dangerous, even for someone as intelligent as Elias. And yet she could not help but hope. "He is different," she whispered to herself. "He will not be defeated by what others fear. He will show us a new way of thinking, a new way of living, and perhaps he will show me something too." As the night deepened, the stars over Virelia shone brightly. In the quiet palace, a human and a princess prepared to challenge centuries of tradition, and the galaxy seemed suddenly full of possibilities. Elias had survived the first test, but the trials were only beginning. And for Liara, hope and excitement burned brighter than any star. The next morning, the sky over Virelia was clear, the lavender sunlight reflecting off the floating towers in soft, shimmering waves. The city seemed peaceful, but in the palace an unease lingered. Whispers passed through the council chambers, and guards moved with unusual alertness. Something was not right. Captain Elias Kane had completed his second trial, a test in zero-gravity simulation chambers, where he had impressed even the most skeptical nobles with his adaptability and quick thinking. Liara observed from the observation deck as he moved gracefully through the weightless environment, coordinating with alien tools that even trained Virelians sometimes mishandled. "Impressive," she murmured. "He doesn't just adapt, he thrives." But as the sun climbed higher, the palace communication systems buzzed urgently. An alert flashed across the crystalline screens in the council chamber. "Unidentified fleet approaching from Sector 7G, possible hostile intent." The council erupted in panic. A fleet. Virelia had faced threats before, but few were prepared for such a sudden approach. Most of the nobles assumed it would be easy to repel, relying on the planet's automated defenses and strategic drones. Yet there was tension in their voices that betrayed uncertainty. Liara's violet eyes narrowed as she studied the readings. The fleet was moving with stealth technology that could bypass most detection systems until it was too late. She realized immediately that conventional defense strategies might fail. Captain Elias stood calmly beside her, studying the holographic displays. "They're hiding their true numbers," he said, "and judging by their trajectory, they've studied our defenses. If they intend to strike, it could be catastrophic." A murmur passed through the council. Humans rarely participated in Viorlian strategy sessions, yet here was one assessing the situation with clarity that few of them could match. Saren Valles, the council president, scowled. "Captain Kane, what do you suggest? This is not a trial. This is real. Lives are at stake." Elias' mind raced. He needed a solution that the council would consider unconventional, yet effective. "We need to act before they reach our orbit," he said. "We can't rely solely on automated defenses. We need to anticipate their strategy, predict their moves, and disrupt their coordination." Several nobles scoffed. "And what do you propose? Our fleet is ready. Our drones are programmed. A human cannot outthink a Viorlian tactical algorithm." Liara stepped forward. "And yet he has already outthought every challenge you set in the palace. Perhaps his approach is what we need. Listen to him." Elias nodded respectfully to her. "We will create a distraction," he explained, pointing to the fleet's projected path. "I suggest splitting our drone network into two groups. One will simulate a planetary evacuation, drawing their attention to multiple targets. Meanwhile, a smaller team, guided by my calculations, will move to intercept and disrupt their communications. We may be able to force them to retreat without engaging in a full battle." The council hesitated. This plan required precision, timing, and reliance on a human's intuition rather than their centuries of protocol. Most nobles were uncomfortable. Some looked ready to veto the idea, but Liara's presence beside Elias gave weight to his proposal. She believed in him, and in this moment her belief alone challenged tradition. "Do it," she said firmly. "We follow his plan. We have no other choice." Elias smiled faintly. "Then we begin immediately." The palace hummed with activity. Drones were redirected, signals intercepted, and the human-human-alien collaboration began. Elias coordinated teams with an ease that impressed even veteran commanders, adjusting instructions in real time as new data appeared. He predicted the enemy fleet's movements with uncanny accuracy, identifying weak points in their formation and suggesting ways to exploit them. Liara observed his focus, her admiration growing with every decision he made. Humans, she realized, could see beyond structure and predictability. They did not rely solely on tradition. They improvised, analyzed, and adapted, and in doing so often discovered solutions that others missed. As the first wave of enemy ships approached the outer orbital layer, the Viorlian defense drones moved into position, appearing to retreat toward the planet. Sensors indicated that the enemy fleet reacted exactly as Elias had predicted, breaking formation to pursue the apparent weakness. Liara's heart pounded. "It's working," she whispered. "He's doing it. He's actually doing it." Elias' small team moved swiftly, using specialized interference devices to disrupt enemy communications. The alien ships, now unable to coordinate, began to collide and stall. The fleet faltered, unable to respond effectively to the unexpected human strategy. The nobles in the council chamber were stunned. The humans' intuition had turned a potential disaster into an opportunity. What many had assumed impossible, a human outsmarting centuries of Viorlian military strategy, was now unfolding before their eyes. Liara's thoughts were a mix of awe and relief. She realized that the reason she had been drawn to Elias was not merely his courage, but his ability to see possibilities that others could not. His approach combined intelligence with imagination, logic with creativity, and daring with careful calculation. The fleet, unable to recover from the coordinated disruption, began to retreat, leaving Viorlia's orbit safe once more. The council exhaled collectively, a mixture of disbelief and relief washing over them. Saren Valles, still trying to maintain his authority, turned to Elias. "Captain Kane, this outcome, you have prevented disaster. We underestimated you." Elias remained humble. I simply did what I thought was best for the planet. Your fleet was strong. Your technology advanced. I only applied a different perspective, one that humans often use when facing the unknown. Liara stepped forward, her eyes bright. Captain Kane did more than prevent disaster. He showed us the value of thinking beyond limits, beyond tradition. He reminded us that courage, intelligence, and ingenuity are not bound by species. A few nobles murmured their agreement, though some still resisted the idea of a human holding such influence in their court. Yet the impact was undeniable. Elias had proven that even the most unlikely candidate could change the course of events when they combined courage with intelligence and creativity. Later that evening, Liara and Elias stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights of Violia sparkled like stars brought to Earth, yet the princess's mind was on the stars beyond. "You handled today brilliantly," Liara said softly. "You didn't just succeed, you saved lives, perhaps even our entire planet." Elias shook his head. "I didn't do it alone. You trusted me and that made a difference. Most would have dismissed me outright. You didn't." Liara smiled faintly. "I had a feeling you were different, even before today. I see the world through rules and tradition, sometimes too tightly. You see through possibilities, through what could be, not just what is. That is rare." Elias looked up at the stars. "Humans survive by imagining solutions to impossible problems. We improvise, adapt, and act when others hesitate. Perhaps that is why I was able to help." She nodded, thoughtful. "I think that is why I want you here, not just as a suitor, but as a partner, someone who sees the world differently. If Violia is to thrive, we need both tradition and innovation. And perhaps, someone who challenges us in ways we cannot imagine." Elias smiled, a quiet warmth in his gaze. "Then we face the next challenge together, Princess. Whatever the Council sets or whatever the stars bring, we adapt. We survive. We succeed." In the days that followed, the Council prepared for the next series of trials. Yet something had shifted. No longer could they underestimate the human who had saved their world. Whispers of admiration spread quietly through the palace, and even some of the staunchest traditionalists began to consider the value of thinking differently. Liara watched Elias as he trained, studied, and prepared. He remained humble, patient, and focused, yet his very presence inspired hope and courage. He had faced impossible odds and succeeded, proving that ingenuity and determination could overcome the most rigid traditions. One evening, as the lavender sun set and the twin moons rose, Liara turned to him. "Do you know what I admire most about you?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "What?" "You never stop seeing possibilities," she said. "Even when everyone else doubts you, you trust your instincts and your mind. You see a path forward when others see walls." Elias smiled, a small, thoughtful smile. "Perhaps that is what humans do best. We see the unknown not as a threat, but as a chance to learn, to grow, to create. And sometimes, it leads us to amazing people and amazing worlds." Liara's heart lifted. She had long felt trapped by expectations, by tradition, by the limitations others placed on her. Yet in Elias, she saw freedom. Not the reckless freedom of defiance, but the brave, thoughtful freedom of one who challenges limits and finds new ways forward. The stars over Violia shone brightly that night, and for the first time in many weeks, the princess felt a sense of calm certainty. The human who had stepped forward was more than a suitor or a trial contestant. He was a partner in the making, someone who could stand beside her as Violia faced the future. And the future, she realized, was suddenly full of possibilities. The morning sun of Violia cast long violet shadows across the council chamber, reflecting off the crystalline walls with an almost blinding brilliance. Princess Liara sat at her usual place, watching the assembly with quiet anticipation. The day was to be unlike any she had ever seen. A strategic council meeting that would decide the fate of the planet's next major development program, a program that, if mismanaged, could destabilize their economy and even their position in the galaxy. The council was tense. Violia's nobles were ready to assert dominance, each eager to showcase their superiority. They prided themselves on centuries of strategic expertise, political acumen, and tradition. Yet now among them sat a human, a creature many considered untested, inexperienced, and in their eyes fragile. Captain Elias Kane rose as the session began. Unlike the nobles, he did not enter with arrogance or expectation. His calm demeanor, careful gestures, and steady voice immediately drew attention. "Princess Liara," he said, bowing slightly, Counselors of Violia, I understand the stakes of this meeting. I also understand that I am an outsider here. But I have prepared an approach that I believe will benefit Violia's future, prevent conflicts, and maximize efficiency. A murmur passed through the council. Some nobles scoffed openly, whispering that humans could not possibly grasp the complexities of Violian politics. Others, more cautious, watched silently, curious despite themselves. Saren Vali's council president frowned. Captain Kane, your human experience is limited. What makes you think you can handle the complexities of our governance, the rival factions, the competing interests? Ilia's expression remained steady. I may not share your centuries of tradition, but humans excel at problem-solving in uncertain circumstances. We anticipate reactions, calculate risks, and adapt quickly to changing scenarios. I propose a plan that considers all possible outcomes and mitigates risks before they manifest. The nobles exchanged skeptical glances, but Liara felt a thrill of hope. She had seen this before in the labyrinth in the fleet defense, but now it was political and intellectual. If humans could think differently in battle, perhaps they could do the same in governance. The council presented the challenge. Violia's trade network had been targeted by rival planets for centuries, and tensions were rising over the proposed expansion into the Glimmering Belt, a rich field of resources in the outer systems. Several factions within the council argued for aggressive expansion, while others advocated caution. Conflict was likely if decisions were made without careful negotiation. Ilias leaned over the holographic display of the trade routes, observing the rival factions' positions and their previous voting patterns. I propose a three-step approach, he said. First, we create a negotiation framework that allows each faction to voice their concerns without conflict. Second, we simulate potential outcomes for each decision using both logic and strategic prediction. Third, we implement a plan that balances risk with benefit, ensuring that Violia secures the Glimmering Belt without provoking unnecessary hostility. A Violian noble snorted. Simulation and prediction? That is trivial. We have councils and advisors for that purpose. Your human methods cannot compare to the wisdom of our ancestors. Ilia's calm voice cut through the tension. Perhaps, yet your ancestors relied on established patterns. My methods consider possibilities outside those patterns. That is how humans survive and thrive in unpredictable situations. I ask only for a chance to demonstrate the effectiveness of this approach. Liara watched closely. She knew the council was reluctant, but she also knew that they respected results. Ilias had already proven his worth in previous trials. She leaned forward and spoke firmly. We proceed with his plan. We will observe and evaluate based on results, not tradition alone. The council hesitated, then grudgingly agreed. The first phase began, negotiation. Ilias guided the factions through structured dialogues, asking questions that forced each side to consider not only their own interests, but the interests of others. He encouraged compromise without losing strategic advantage, and slowly the nobles began to see value in his approach. Hours passed. Ideas were debated, objections raised and resolved, and patterns emerged. Ilias noticed subtle behaviors, the slight hesitation of one noble before agreeing, the way another's gestures revealed unspoken concerns. He adjusted his strategy, subtly guiding discussions toward productive compromise. Liara observed his patience and adaptability. Where Violian nobles might push aggressively or rely solely on precedent, Ilias responded to the dynamics of the room. He anticipated reactions, suggested alternatives, and diffused tension with calm reasoning. Finally, they reached the second phase, simulation. Using the holographic network, Ilias demonstrated various scenarios of trade expansion, showing potential gains, losses, and risks associated with each choice. Unlike the rigid calculations of Violian algorithms, his models incorporated uncertainty, probability, and human-style problem-solving, factors the nobles had rarely considered. The council watched in astonishment. For the first time, they could see not only the immediate outcomes but the ripple effects of their decisions, from economic shifts to potential rival responses. What had seemed like simple policy choices now became a complex, dynamic system, and the human at the center of it had mapped it with clarity. Saren Vali's, trying to maintain authority, leaned forward. Your models are comprehensive, but can they be trusted? Elias met his gaze steadily. They are based on careful observation, prediction, and contingency planning. Nothing is certain, but nothing in governance ever is. My approach does not replace wisdom, it supplements it, adding flexibility where tradition alone would fail. A silence filled the room as the council considered his words. Slowly, agreement emerged. Nobles began to nod, discussion became constructive rather than adversarial, and a plan for trade expansion into the glimmering belt took shape, one that balanced ambition with caution. Liara felt a surge of admiration. Humans, she realized, were remarkable not because they were stronger or faster, but because they thought differently. Where others relied on rigid rules, Elias relied on observation, logic, and adaptability. His insight had transformed what could have been chaos into order, but even as success seemed certain, a subtle tension lingered. Not all nobles were convinced, and some plotted to undermine Elias' influence. Political intrigue was as dangerous as any fleet or labyrinth. If the council decided against him, his victories could be erased, and tradition could reassert control. Liara approached Elias after the session, her voice quiet but firm. "You did more than impress the council. You changed the way they think. But some will resent you, and they may act to prevent further influence. Be cautious." Elias nodded. "I expected resistance. Humans face opposition in every step we take. Strategy, diplomacy, and patience are key. We proceed carefully, but we proceed." Days passed, and the political tension increased. Subtle obstacles were introduced to his proposals, attempts to discredit him through misinformation, and quiet attempts to sway Liara's influence. Yet each time, Elias adapted. He observed carefully, addressed concerns with clarity, and offered compromises that strengthened his position rather than weakening it. Liara could see the council beginning to change. Not all were convinced, but more were willing to listen, to consider the human perspective, to accept that innovation could coexist with tradition. Elias' success was not only in solving problems, but in demonstrating the value of diverse thinking. Late one evening, as the council chambers emptied and the city below settled into twilight, Liara and Elias walked along the palace garden. Floating platforms illuminated by soft crystal lights reflected in the water below. "You have done something remarkable," Liara said softly. "You've not only solved problems, but you've opened minds. That is a rare gift." Elias looked at her, his eyes thoughtful. "I do what I can. Humans thrive because we adapt. We see possibilities others miss. Perhaps that is why I was able to help here. Not because I am superior, but because I am different." Liara smiled. "And sometimes being different is exactly what the world needs. I see now why I believed in you from the start. You do not just follow rules, you understand them, and then you find a better way." Elias paused, looking at the stars beyond the palace. "That is what humans do, and perhaps it is what any world needs, not just Violia, courage, intelligence, creativity, and the willingness to act." Liara felt hope stir in her chest. The trials, the threats, and the political tension had all revealed something profound. That strength was not only measured in skill or tradition, but in vision, ingenuity, and heart. Elias embodied all of these qualities. The next day, the council gathered to finalize their decisions. This time, their discussions were smoother, more constructive, guided by the frameworks Elias had introduced. Agreements were reached, compromises made, and Violia's path toward the glimmering belt was secured without conflict. The human had not only succeeded, but had become indispensable. As the meeting adjourned, Liara approached him. "Today, you have not only proven your worth, you have shown them what true leadership can be. Perhaps the council is finally ready to see things differently." Elias shook his head, modest but proud. "I do not seek recognition. I only seek to help, to apply what I know to achieve what must be done. But your trust has made all the difference." Liara smiled, her eyes reflecting the soft violet light of the palace. "And my trust will not falter. We face the final trial soon, Captain Kane. Whatever it is, I know you will rise to meet it. You have already changed Violia's future, and perhaps mine as well." The city shimmered below them, peaceful but alive with possibility. For Liara, the human beside her was no longer just a candidate or an ambassador. He was a partner, a mind capable of shaping the future of her world. And for Elias, the challenge of navigating not only tradition but imagination, courage, and diplomacy had only just begun. The stars above Violia gleamed brightly, a reminder that the universe was vast, full of unknowns, and that humanity, resilient, resourceful, and daring, had a role to play among them. And with that thought, both princess and human prepared for the next challenge, ready to face whatever tests awaited with courage, ingenuity, and trust in one another. The palace of Violia was alive with movement and anticipation. The grand hall, with its crystalline walls reflecting the soft violet light of the twin moons, was filled with nobles, advisors, and citizens eager to witness a historic declaration. Princess Liara stood at the front, her posture regal yet relaxed, her eyes shining with determination. Today was the day the council would formally acknowledge Captain Elias Kane's worth. Today, the human who had defied expectations would either be embraced or dismissed. Elias stood beside her, calm and confident, his human presence contrasting with the traditional elegance of the Viorlian court. His uniform, simple yet practical, bore the insignia of Earth's interstellar alliance. Though many in the council still regarded him with skepticism, the past trials had proven his brilliance through the labyrinth, the fleet attack, and the political strategy that had secured Viorlia's expansion. Saren Valles, the council president, cleared his throat. Today, we convene to recognize not only the accomplishments of Princess Liara, but also the extraordinary contributions of Captain Elias Kane. This council has observed his ingenuity, courage, and intelligence in trials that tested mind, body, and spirit. We now formally consider his role in the future of Violia. A murmur rippled through the hall. Some nobles shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to accept that a human could achieve what generations of Viorlians had failed to do. Others watched with admiration, inspired by the foreigner who had changed their world. Liara stepped forward, her violet eyes scanning the room. Captain Kane has demonstrated qualities that no noble, regardless of lineage, could have shown, she said. He has faced challenges with creativity, courage, and empathy. He has saved our planet from attack, guided our council toward wisdom, and proven that true leadership does not depend on ancestry but on vision and action. The words hung in the air, and the hall fell silent. Elias remained humble, bowing his head slightly. I am honored by your trust, Princess Liara, and by the recognition of this council. I have only sought to serve Violia to the best of my ability, using the perspective and experience I have. I am grateful that it has been of value. Even the skeptical nobles could not deny the evidence of his actions. Some of them had witnessed the labyrinth, the defense of the fleet, and the strategic negotiations firsthand. It was impossible to argue against results. Slowly, one by one, the council members nodded, their skepticism giving way to acknowledgement. Saren Valles spoke again, his voice quieter now. Captain Kane, it is clear that your contributions have earned respect. You are hereby granted the status of advisor to the princess, with full authority to guide, counsel, and assist in matters of planetary strategy and diplomacy. The hall erupted in whispers of approval and astonishment. A human, a species long underestimated, had not only survived Viorlia's trials but had become indispensable. For the first time, the council saw the potential of thinking differently, of embracing new ideas and perspectives. Liara turned to Elias, a smile lighting her face. This is only the beginning, she said. Together, we can lead Violia into a future where courage, ingenuity, and collaboration define success. Elias met her gaze. I am ready, Princess. Whatever challenges await, we will face them together. The months that followed were filled with innovation, growth, and collaboration. Elias worked closely with the council, implementing new strategies for exploration, trade, and defense. He introduced concepts from human experience, ways of thinking about risk, cooperation, and adaptability that were unfamiliar to Violia but proved remarkably effective. One project focused on expanding Viorlia's interstellar trade network. Elias suggested using modular drones capable of autonomous problem-solving, inspired by human technology designs. Initially, the nobles doubted the approach, fearing the unfamiliar methods might fail. But the results were undeniable. Trade efficiency increased, rival planets were impressed by the adaptability of Viorlia's fleet, and resources flowed smoothly into the glimmering belt without conflict. Liara watched him at work, noting the subtle ways he encouraged collaboration. He did not dominate discussions or force decisions. Instead, he asked questions, invited suggestions, and helped others see possibilities they had never considered. In this, he reminded her of why she had believed in him from the start, not only his intelligence but his humility and vision. The human's influence extended beyond logistics and strategy. He began mentoring young nobles, teaching them to think critically and creatively. Many had once been dismissive, mocking his human ways. Now they sought his guidance, eager to learn new approaches. The court began to shift, slowly but surely, as innovation gained respect alongside tradition. Yet even as Virelia thrived, challenges remained. Rival factions still watched closely, waiting for mistakes, hoping to undermine Elia's influence. Some sought to exploit cultural differences, while others questioned the princess's judgment in supporting a human. But Liara and Elias remained steadfast, addressing challenges with patience, intelligence, and unwavering trust in each other. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the city, Liara and Elias walked along the palace balcony. The lavender light reflected off the floating towers, casting soft shadows across the gardens. "You've changed more than just policy," Liara said softly. "You've changed minds, hearts, and even me." Elias glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "I have only done what humans do best, adapt, observe, and act. But it seems that in doing so, I have also found something remarkable, a partner who believes in possibility, who sees beyond what is into what can be." Liara's smile deepened. "It feels like Virelia is awakening. And I feel like I can finally lead the way I've always imagined, with someone who shares the vision." Elias nodded, looking out toward the horizon. "The universe is vast, Princess. There are worlds to explore, challenges to face, and opportunities to create. And we will face them together." In the months that followed, Liara and Elias traveled across Virelia and beyond. They oversaw trade missions, mediated interstellar disputes, and explored new technologies. Everywhere they went, humans, adaptability, and creativity proved invaluable. And wherever they went, Liara saw the value of embracing differences, of combining tradition with innovation, and of trusting in courage and ingenuity. One day, as they observed a distant planet through advanced telescopes, Liara turned to Elias. "Do you ever think about what your people would say if they knew what you've done here?" Elias chuckled softly. "They would be surprised, I'm sure, but humans are adaptable. They understand that sometimes the impossible becomes possible when someone is willing to see differently and act boldly." Liara laughed, a sound of pure joy. "And yet, despite all that, you remain humble. You do not boast of your achievements. You simply do what is necessary." Elias smiled. "I have learned from this world as much as it has learned from me. Leadership is not about recognition. It is about responsibility, courage, and understanding. And perhaps most of all, it is about partnership. I could not have done this without your trust, Princess Liara." The stars above Virelia shone brilliantly, as if acknowledging their journey. The human and the princess stood side by side, gazing at the infinite possibilities that stretched across the galaxy. It was clear that Virelia had changed forever. The nobles had learned that tradition alone could not sustain a civilization. The citizens had seen that courage, ingenuity, and action mattered more than lineage. And Princess Liara had discovered a partner who complemented her vision, someone who could see the universe not as a series of obstacles, but as a landscape of opportunities. The final council meeting of the year marked a historic moment. The Virelian court formally recognized Elias Kane, not merely as a human guest or ambassador, but as a valued advisor, strategist, and partner to the princess. For the first time, humanity had a voice at the heart of an alien civilization, a voice that had proven worthy through courage, intellect, and creativity. Liara addressed the council, her voice confident and clear. "Today, we acknowledge that true worth is measured not by blood or title, but by action, vision, and courage. Captain Elias Kane has shown us that. Humanity, with its ingenuity and spirit, has proven itself extraordinary. And together, we will continue to lead Virelia into a future that embraces both tradition and innovation." Applause filled the hall. Even the most skeptical nobles could not deny the truth of her words. Elias stood beside her, modest yet proud, knowing that the journey they had begun together had changed a planet, and perhaps even a galaxy. That evening, Liara and Elias stood on the highest balcony of the palace, the city shimmering beneath them and the stars beyond inviting them forward. "Do you see it?" Liara asked, gesturing to the horizon. "The future waiting for us?" Elias nodded. "I see it. And I know that together we can meet anything it holds." The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, filled with unknown worlds, untold challenges, and limitless possibilities. And in that vast expanse, humanity, resilient, inventive, courageous, had found a place among the stars. For Liara, Elias was more than a partner. He was a symbol of hope, ingenuity, and the power of seeing differently. And for Elias, Liara was a leader who believed in possibilities, in courage, and in partnership. Together, they looked out across the universe, ready to embrace whatever came next, certain that humanity had proven itself, not by conquest, but by vision, action, and heart. And so, the alien princess and the human ambassador began a new chapter, one where the galaxy itself became a playground of possibility, and the stars shone brighter than ever for those willing to reach for them.